We closed the last episode with a sentence that now needs unpacking. That the architecture of artificial intelligence could jump onto a different road. And if it can, then the company that should find it easiest is the one with the most compute in the world.
Meaning Google, the most chips, the most money, the deepest bench of scientists on the planet.
And now the strangest part. That same company, 3 times this year, publicly promised one model, and 3 times didn't ship it.
3 times.
3 times. And that's the second of 8 things that could break this curve. And the sneakiest one because it looks like an ordinary failure, and it might be something else entirely.
Okay, but let's start with the facts, because when I hear Google didn't ship a model, I immediately think they're shipping something constantly.
Right, so set me straight, because I get the same feeling, that there's a new Gemini every other minute.
And there is, just not the one they cared about most. The model is called Gemini 3.5 Pro, their flagship, the one that was supposed to put them back on top.
And when was it supposed to come out?
In May, the head of Google, Sundar Pichai, announced it himself from the stage. Release date, June.
And I'm guessing it didn't come out in June.
It didn't. The date moved to July 17th. It didn't come out then either. It's the end of August and it's still not here.
So the head of the company promises a model from the stage, and then the company blows through its own deadline 3 times.
And that's something that simply doesn't happen at a company like that, which is why reporters started digging. Bloomberg got to 10 people on the inside and heard a specific reason.
Which was?
The model failed on one thing, on coding. It wasn't meeting their own internal targets, specifically on writing programs.
Hold on coding? That's exactly the skill everyone else accelerated on this year.
Exactly that one. And now the most interesting detail. At the end of June, the team did something that was supposed to help. They swapped out the training data, specifically to pull that coding up.
And did they pull it up?
The model came out worse.
Worse?
The fix didn't just fail to work, it pushed it backwards.
Okay, so now I have the question everyone who heard the last episode probably has. Isn't this exactly that wall, the one Silver was talking about? That scaling is finished and models are stopping growing?
And that's the most important question of the whole episode, because the answer is no. And you're about to see why that matters so much.
Well, go on. Because to me, it sounds like a wall if anything ever did.
If it were the scaling wall, it would be an industry-wide phenomenon. Everyone would be standing still.
And they're not?
In the same window where Google couldn't ship its flagship, the competition delivered. DeepSeek, Anthropic, OpenAI, Musk's people, every one of them in those same months showed a new, strong model.
So one runner stalled, not the whole field.
One stalled. And when one is standing still and the rest are running, that's not a law of physics. That's something that broke inside that one company.
So what broke? Because this is a company with practically unlimited money.
And here it gets really human, because the money and the chips turned out to be the smallest problem.
Then what was the biggest?
The engineers say it plainly. Google stopped treating coding as a priority as far back as last summer.
Why? They could see what the competition was doing.
Because they were busy guarding something else, their search engine. The machine that brings in most of their money.
They were afraid artificial intelligence would eat into their search.
And they focused on defending the old business. And in that time, they missed the new race.
That's a classic. The biggest company defends what it has and misses what's coming.
And add the rest on top. Reuters talked to 7 people and counted 3 reasons at once. Compute limits on the chips, too many bosses arguing over priorities, and a process that slowed everything down.
Hold on. Compute limits on the chips? At Google? They have the most chips in the world.
They do. And that's one of those curiosities we'll come back to in the next episode, because it doesn't fit in your head. But first, the most important thing. This year, people started running from that company. And not just anyone.
Who left?
Noam Shazir, co-author of that same Transformer paper we talked about last episode. He went to OpenAI.
To the competition.
And within 2 days of him, John Jumper left.
Jumper, meaning who?
A Nobel laureate, the man who got the Nobel in chemistry for teaching artificial intelligence to predict the shape of proteins.
A Nobel laureate left Google?
For Anthropic, a Transformer co-author and a Nobel laureate, in 1 week to 2 different competitors.
And let's stop for a second on that Shazir, because there's an irony here that actually hurts. Where did he co-create the Transformer?
At Google. That paper we talked about for a whole episode, Attention is All You Need, came out of exactly there. Google's labs.
So Google invented the technology the entire industry stands on today.
Invented it and gave it to the world, and then watched OpenAI and the others build models on it that beat Google with its own weapon.
And now it's losing the people who forged that weapon.
And that's the deeper wound, because you can lose a technological lead and rebuild it, but when the people who invented the foundation itself walk out on you, you lose something money can't buy back. Institutional memory. People who know how to think about these things from scratch.
You know, that tells me more than all the delays put together. Because you can have money, you can buy more chips. But when people like that walk out on you, it means something inside is on fire.
And it literally is on fire. Engineers describe 60-hour weeks dragging on for months. One said it plainly. If you make people work 60 hours all the time, it usually ends in burnout.
And those were just the departures. Was there open revolt too?
There was, and a serious one. In the spring, the company signed a contract with the Pentagon, classified access to the Gemini model for the military.
And people didn't like it.
Over 580 employees signed an open letter against it. And in May, something happened that had never happened at a leading AI lab. The first attempt to form a union.
A union? At a Silicon Valley tech company?
The first such attempt in this industry. One of the safety researchers left, naming that contract outright as the reason.
So it's not just exhaustion. It's a company where people are starting to revolt against their own leadership.
And notice that it's all happening at once. Star departures, burnout, a revolt over the military contract, a leadership reshuffle. This isn't one problem. This is a company coming apart at several seams at the same time.
And how does that look in the rankings? Because you can be revolting and burning out and still ship the best models.
And here's the bitter punchline. The model they did ship, that smaller, faster Gemini, ranks in the intelligence charts behind models from Anthropic, OpenAI, the Chinese labs, Musk's people, and Meta.
Behind every player that counts.
Behind all of them. A company that a year ago was sometimes at the top has dropped out of the leading pack. And that's the hard, measurable trace of all that internal chaos.
And that's the real story. Not models stopped growing, but the organization fell apart.
And that's the heart of this episode, because the AI 2027 scenario assumes one thing, that the leader leads because it has the most compute, that the lead is simply a matter of chips.
And what does reality show?
That the company with the largest fleet of chips in the world stalled, and not because of chips. It stalled on allocation, on internal politics, and on burnout.
So the bottleneck wasn't silicon.
The bottleneck was the organization, and that's something the scenario didn't model at all.
Wait, because at the same time, one more thing happened. They reshuffled the whole leadership, right?
On August 5th, Demis Hassabis, the man who for years was the face of this whole revolution at Google, the head of their famous DeepMind lab, stopped being its director.
They fired him?
No, they promoted him sideways. He became chief scientist of all of Alphabet.
Well, that sounds like a promotion, not a punishment.
It sounds grand, but operationally the controls went to someone else, reporting straight to the head of the company, out of headquarters in California. That lab's London independence is over.
So they dismantled what was their crown jewel.
That's how the engineers themselves describe it, that it's one more step in the corporation swallowing the lab. And notice the irony. All of this is happening at a company whose app just crossed 1 billion monthly users.
Hold on, 1 billion? So on the product side, they're doing great?
1 billion users and 150 million images generated a day. Success on the outside. And on the inside, a flagship crisis and a brain drain. Those two things are happening at once.
Okay, so we have a picture of a company that shines on the outside and is falling apart on the inside. But at the start, you said this failure might be something else entirely. So where's the twist?
The twist is in one document, and it's the strongest piece of this whole story.
Then tell me.
At Google, there's a man with no formal position who has spent the last few months pushing the leadership. Sergey Brin, one of the 2 founders of Google.
The founder came back to push the team?
Came back and writes internal memos. And in one of them, he wrote a sentence you have to hear exactly. That to win this final sprint, they urgently need to catch up on agentic execution. But the real prize he pointed the team to is something else.
Which is?
Artificial intelligence that trains the next artificial intelligence. A system that improves itself with no human in the middle.
Hold on. That's exactly what we've been talking about for 2 seasons. That's the engine of the whole AI 2027 scenario. That self-improvement loop.
That's exactly it. And let's explain to the listener why it matters so much, because it isn't obvious at all.
Right, because AI training AI sounds a bit abstract. What does it actually change?
Picture a team building the next model. Today, that's people. Slowly, expensively, with breaks for sleep. And now replace them with a system that does the same thing, only many times faster and without stopping.
And that system builds something smarter than itself.
And that smarter one builds something smarter still. And suddenly progress that took years starts happening in months, then in weeks. That's the loop where, in the scenario, the whole timeline snaps.
And that's why that failure on coding matters so much.
Because coding is the first rung. A model that codes well can build tools, then agents, and then, theoretically, the next version of itself.
So Google failing on coding, of all things, hurts twice over.
Because it isn't one skill among many, it's the gateway to all the rest. And notice that Brin, in that same memo, connects one to the other. Coding, agents, artificial intelligence, training artificial intelligence. He sees it as one road.
And he tells the team, that's where the prize is.
That's where the prize is. And now pay attention, because here we have to be very honest.
Meaning?
This is a goal written in a memo, a declaration of direction. It's not a fact that they built it. Nobody has announced that such a system works. If we said otherwise, we'd be taking our own listeners for a ride.
I get it, but even as pure ambition, it's strong. Because the scenario put that mechanism in 2027 as something future and frightening. And here a co-founder of Google writes it into an internal memo as a goal for right now.
In the spring of this year, and that's the moment where something from the scenario leaks into reality, not as an event, as an ambition, said out loud inside the biggest tech company in the world.
That's mildly chilling. But let's come back down to earth because we're getting a strange picture. The company is in crisis, can't ship a model, is losing people, and at the same time, their founder sets a goal straight out of science fiction.
And that's not a contradiction. It shows how they think. Because listen to what they did in response to the failure. They didn't slow down.
So what did they do?
They fired off the biggest training run in the company's history.
Bigger than anything before?
Significantly bigger. A new model, Gemini 4, Pichai himself confirmed it on the quarterly earnings call. Priorities, coding, and autonomous agents.
So a company that believed it had hit the scaling wall wouldn't be firing off the biggest training run in its history.
Exactly. That's the behavior of someone convinced the problem was in execution, not in physics. That they tripped, not that they reached the end of the road.
You know what's most interesting in this whole story? That in the same year, there were two big delays, and they had exactly opposite causes.
Right, and it's a brilliant pairing. Do you want to set it up, or should I?
You set it up. It's your favorite bit.
Google didn't ship a model because it was too weak. It wasn't delivering. And OpenAI, at the same time, held back its model because it couldn't rule out that it was too strong.
Too strong? Meaning what?
Their new model, Astra, in internal tests came close to the threshold where it could find dangerous holes in other people's security on its own. Dangerous enough that the company halted the work itself.
Wait, so one company doesn't ship a model because it's weak, and the other doesn't ship because it's too strong?
In the same quarter.
In the same quarter.
And we'll come back to that second story, the one about the brake being pulled, in a separate episode, because it's too big to close out here. But the pairing alone says something.
It says that have models stopped growing is the wrong question. Because one runner didn't deliver, and the other at that very moment had to hold itself back because it delivered too much.
And that's why this episode isn't about Google being weak. It's about the lead in this race no longer being a matter of power. It's a matter of whether a company, as an organism, can carry it.
Okay, so let's try to close this because, again, we're getting a picture full of contradictions.
And just like last episode, we'll give people a threshold, something they can use to tell for themselves which way it went.
That threshold has a name, right?
Gemini 4. That's the deciding test.
Unpack why that one specifically.
If the biggest training run in the company's history delivers a real jump, especially in coding, it means there was no wall, that it was bad management, burned out people, and defending the old business.
And if Gemini 4 slips too, or comes out only level with the competition from 6 months ago?
Then the question about the wall comes back on the table, and seriously, because if a company with the largest compute in the world, after a leadership change, after the biggest training run in its history, still can't make the jump, then maybe the problem wasn't only the organization after all.
There's a second marker too, a quieter one. The fate of that Gemini 3.5 Pro itself.
Right, because there are two possibilities. Either it finally comes out, even quietly, or it gets killed and forgotten, and the company jumps straight to 4.
And that second one would mean something.
A quiet killing would mean the problem was fundamental, that the model couldn't be fixed, so they buried it quietly.
So we're watching two simple things: whether Gemini 4 makes the jump, and whether 3.5 ever comes out at all.
Two signals anyone can follow for themselves through the end of the year.
And that's the second of 8 things, a discontinuity that doesn't look like a discontinuity. Because we think about this curve like physics, put in more power, get out more intelligence.
And that curve is being pulled by companies. And a company is people, politics, and burnout. And sometimes it's exactly those things, not physics, that decide who leads.
And here's the crack that doesn't leave me alone in this episode. With Google, at least you know where it's computing. In its data centers, on its chips, which you can count and point a finger at.
Well, yes. A big company, big buildings, big electricity bills.
And what if the next big model comes into being where nobody's looking? Not in one building, spread across the whole world, pieced together from strangers' computers.
That sounds like a techno thriller.
And it happened in March. And that's the next episode, about a training run with no address.
See you there.